sit down up front. You get to ask more questions if you're sitting up front. Thank you everyone for coming today. Can everybody hear okay? Yeah, good? Okay, we're ready? Okay. My name is Colleen West. I work for a company called Corrective Asphalt Materials. We have some other members of our team. If you guys want to raise your hands, Rachel's out there. I see Mike, Jack, there's a few people. So if you guys have questions after this, feel free to ask any of us who just raised our hands. We're in booth 1016. But today we're going to be talking about asphalt preservation and what agencies can do differently now than you guys have in the past as roads are aging faster and our maintenance dollars are not keeping up. Whoop, let me go to this. So yeah, today, why roads are increasing at a faster rate, what you guys can do to kind of get ahead, as I'm sure most people and agencies feel like you're in a hole trying to dig yourself out. So that's kind of what we're going to try and help you dig yourself out slowly of your budgetary hole as your roadway networks are aging. If you guys haven't already, some housekeeping stuff. If you haven't already, please download the APWA PWX app. It's just in the App Store, PWX 2025. It'll help you kind of plan out your next 36 or 48 hours. So it has a lot of great information. So please download it if you haven't. Well, that didn't work. Hold on. There we go. Okay, let me see if this is going to work. Okay, cool. That works. Okay, we're just going to keep the internet up there. So this is preservation of asphalt. We kind of give the same lunch and learn PowerPoint presentation throughout our company. It's a standard. If you guys love it and you want us to come do it at your agency, we're more than welcome to. It's kind of a standard presentation that we do. So long-term solutions for your roadway networks. So current state of our roads, I'm guessing if you're here today, you feel like you are in the bottom of a hole trying to figure out to dig your way out. Is that what most people are feeling like? You don't have the funds for your roadway networks, or do you guys all have tons of money and you thought this was just going to be super exciting, so you decided to come sit in on it? No? So yeah, my guess would be that everybody's feeling the same way. Your budgets don't meet the needs of your agency, and so you're all trying to figure it out on what to do. So there's a couple different reasons agencies are where you are today financially. The first reason is asphalt oils, and maybe some of you have heard this before. Asphalt oils are significantly different than they were 50 or 60 years ago. So 50 or 60 years ago, your Conoco and your Exxon and all of those oil refineries and suppliers, they gave oil, oil was used for gas, diesel, kerosene, asphalt, just four simple things. And that's what we were giving dollars, or that's what the oil companies were selling to. Today, the oil companies are making money everywhere. Oil kind of runs us. It's in plastics, it's in our tires, it's in cosmetics, it's even in some pharmaceuticals like aspirin. So oil refineries are selling to everyone and they're making money everywhere. The asphalt suppliers, so like XYZ Contracting, whoever makes your asphalt in your agency, your local asphalt plant supplier, they've always gotten the bottom of the barrel stuff. So the asphalt suppliers have always gotten the bottom sludge of your leftover junk. But what has happened the last 20, 30, 40 years is your Exxon and your Conoco and those guys have become really, really efficient at sucking all of the good stuff out. So what the asphalt suppliers are getting today it's far inferior of what they were getting 20, 30, 40 years ago. So you guys are already in a deficit of, the roadways and the asphalt that actually went down on your roadways in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. It's totally different today. It's dry, it's oxidized, it's a dry oil. So already you guys are in a deficit than what the guys were before you. The other thing that has happened is that we used to get our oil from Venezuela. In the mid-2000s, that relationship stopped. And so now the asphalt suppliers, your Conoco and Exxon, those guys they get the oil from Canada. Is anyone here from Canada? So good, that's good. The oil from Canada is not as good, unfortunately, as Venezuela. It's, I'll probably get beat. Oh, I'm so sorry. Close your ears. Close them. So, unfortunately, oil from Canada, it's shallow, it's fracked, it's really sandy, it's just inferior to what we used to get from Venezuela. So you guys are already, what you're getting in 2025 on your road, you guys are already in a deficit. So the supply is different, it's not as good, but most agencies haven't started thinking differently. So we have to start thinking differently, and we have to start thinking smarter because of what we're getting. So, and that's why the roads are aging at such a fast rate now. Usually, back in the 80s or 90s, or early 2000s, if you paved a road, it would be black for 2 or 3 years. Now, a lot of you, if you've noticed, when you pave a road, it's dried out and it's gray in 90 days. And that's just because that oil is so dry. So there's a lot of changes, but we aren't changing our ways. And so we have to start thinking smarter. It stinks, but it's what we have to do. So the problem, what we just talked about, the problem is roads are aging faster. You guys don't have the funds to do what you need to keep up. A lot of you, if your agency or your city or municipality is growing, you guys have more roads that you have to take care of with the same amount of funds. If you're building new subdivisions, all of a sudden you're taking on more roads, you're not taking on more dollars. So everybody has to get smarter. So it's a scary place to be if you're running a public works division or you're an engineer and you're looking at your budget and you're trying to figure out how to do it. I'm sure it's a really scary situation, but we got to think smarter. And at any time, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I have 2 young kids that interrupt me all day, every day, so you're fine. So, but a solution is out there. Again, if we can start thinking smarter, we can get away from the old. The old thinking was pave it, and then we're going to let it deteriorate. We're going to start patching. We'll start filling cracks. We're going to work on maintenance. We're going to pave it, and then we're going to let it fall apart, and then we'll figure it out. But if we can start thinking smarter from the get-go, and if we can stop thinking, I'm going to let it fall apart and then I'm going to try and maintain it, we can start thinking smarter. What we can do is start taking some of those maintenance dollars, and we're not all of a sudden the crack fill, the pothole, that kind of money. We can start reallocating it later down the line to mill fills and overlays. If we start thinking smarter and start preserving that oil right out of the gate, start preserving that roadway, we can reallocate those maintenance dollars down the line and use those for mill fills, overlays, things that, quite frankly, your residents really want to see anyway, correct? So that's all they care about. They just want a new road all the time, and they think they should get it every 10 years. Okay, I thought someone had a question. So the goal is preservation, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about not maintenance. We've got to think differently. If you guys walk out of here thinking anything today, what we want you to understand is there's a difference between preserving a road and keeping it at a 9 or a 10 or an 8. We're trying to preserve it at a high level. There's a difference between preservation and maintenance. Maintenance is what we do when we do nothing and we let it fall apart and then we start crack filling, pothole patching. Preserving is doing something right away and trying to keep it in the 90s and keeping it in really good condition. We have to start thinking differently because the old ways are only getting you guys deeper into your financial hole, and it's not digging you out. And the other thing I want to talk about today is we want to think of preservation, keeping it in a really good condition instead of rejuvenation. So rejuvenation is we're taking something, we're trying to make it better. Preservation is let's keep it at a high scale. There's one way we can do that to truly preserve those oils and keep them in good condition is through MRT, Maltene Replacement Technology. We're going to talk a little bit chemically about asphalt here because then you guys can understand why asphalt's aging faster and what you can do. So has anyone ever heard, if you're really techie and you like oil, if you like asphalt oils and you like specs, maybe you've seen in specs Maltenes and asphaltenes. Do those sound familiar at all to anyone? Bueller? No? Okay. So, okay, well, yes. You work, yes. Okay, yes, you in the back, thank you. Okay, so asphaltenes and maltenes. So if you think about your roadway is, it's 95% rock in aggregate, different sizes aggregate, and then it's about 5% liquid AC. So depending on where you are in the country, it'd be like a 64-22 or a 58-28. That liquid AC oil is about 5% that. That liquid AC black oil, it has two main components, asphaltenes and maltenes. So maltenes are what keep that liquid flexible. If you think about that, if you think about the oil in your roads and the rock, think about like Elmer's glue is coating a big ball of marbles. So if you think about that Elmer's glue, you want it to be flexible. You want that Elmer's glue to stay soft and flexible, but you also want it to be durable and hard to keep everything stuck together. So the maltenes are what keep that Elmer's glue soft and flexible. The asphaltenes in that black oil are what keep it durable and strong. There's a ratio of maltenes to asphaltenes that, with that ratio, that keep it flexible and durable and strong. So maltenes, as they age, as the pavement oxidizes and it dries out, maltenes actually decrease. So if you think of that flexible, soft Elmer's glue, as the asphalt is losing maltenes, it's becoming dry and brittle. And if you think about asphalt and like a Elmer's glue, when it becomes dry and brittle, what happens? That Elmer's glue shrinks around the marbles and you'll start losing marbles. So if you think about that with asphalt and oxidation, as that oil dries out and it oxidizes and it loses the maltenes, you're going to start losing your fines and you're going to start losing your aggregate on the surface. When that happens, that's the first signs of oxidation. That's when your road really starts to deteriorate. Does that kind of make sense a little bit if you think about Elmer's glue and rock or Elmer's glue and marbles? So the goal is we're trying to keep the black asphalt oil flexible and strong. So with that, if you can keep it flexible and strong, you can keep that road into the 90s. If it starts drying out, it's going to start aging and deteriorating. There's a lot of lines on this graph. You can ignore most of them. I just want to talk about, there's a light gray line here that kind of goes down, and that's important. That just shows what happens to roads as they age and if you choose to do nothing. Kind of our old way of thinking of just, we're going to pave it, and then when it starts to fall apart, we're going to send the guys out, we're going to pothole patch, we're going to send our guys out, and we're going to crack fill, and that's what we're going to do. And what used to be in 20 or 25 years, you could repave. But now, as asphalt roadways are deteriorating at such a fast rate, you'll be lucky to get 10, 15, 20 years. Unfortunately, this curve and their roadway is going to last 25 years, and all you have to do is crack fill and maybe minor pothole patch. That isn't the name of the game. Most likely at 5, 6, 7 years, your roads are really starting to age if you do anything. So the goal is, if you can keep that maltene content high, like we talked about, and if you can keep that asphaltene to maltene ratio as similar to where it was as when it came out of the asphalt plant, you can keep that oil in its newest condition possible, you can keep your road in the 90s for 6, 7, 10, 12 years. So that's the goal. So if you can do that, you should be able to keep your road in good condition, like on this line on the far left. So that's the goal. Otherwise, if you do nothing, it'll be dropping off, and it drops off really quickly. So I'm going to talk about technical stuff a little bit. There was a long-term study done in Minnesota that we did with 3 agencies who have long-term programs. And this kind of shows long-term what you can do if you're proactive and you replace the maltenes and you keep it at a high level for a long period of time. So the background is the problem to solve. So with these agencies, we were trying to figure out if you replace maltenes and you do Maltene Replacement Technology and you're keeping those oils at a high level, is it better to do it immediately or a couple years down the line? That's what we were trying to figure out. Should we do it, right at year 0, year 1, year 2, or should we wait? And then if an agency wants to continue with Maltene replacement technology down the line, if they want to continue and try and keep that oil flexible, when could they possibly do a second application? So there were 3 different agencies in Minnesota that let us core and do some long-term data. They each had different programs. So the city of Woodbury, they treated their roads at year 1. The city of Eden Prairie chose to treat their roads at year 2. And then the city of Richfield, due to their budgets, they chose to treat their roads at year 3. I'm going to go to the data in a minute. But this is what we looked at. So we always like to do visuals with agencies. When we first go into an agency, we always want to do visuals. We always want to do a treated and untreated section. So visually, you can see the changes long term, and you can see the changes of your asphalt and oils right on the surface. Then we also, if we're doing coring with the city, which we really do like coring, I like the data, I find the data really interesting. We want to do the viscosity change. The viscosity is the softness of those oils. So you want to keep the oils soft. So that's the goal. So that's what the viscosity means, is just keep that oil flexible. Keep the Elmer's glue flexible without it drying out. The third thing we always test for is the chemical composition, and that is that asphaltene to Maltene ratio. We want that at the closest ratio of, when the pavement and that oil is brand new. That's going to be able to keep your roads at a 90. So those are the 3 testing methodology that we look at, and that's what you look at with rejuvenators usually. Those are the things that you want to look at. So what does the data say? I'm going to skip forward because I wasn't able to redo that. There we go. So what does the data say? So there's a lot of numbers up here. Just ignore it. I'll kind of summarize it. So if you really like data and you're really techie and you want to talk about it afterwards, you can come to the booth and we can talk about it all afternoon. I find it really interesting. Most people do not. So Woodbury. So what it says is Woodbury chose to do Maltene replacement technology at year 1. They wanted to do it right away. That's what they said, we think this will work. Let's do it right at year 1. So we cored for several years, and what we found is because they treated at year 1, we were able to keep that viscosity low. We were able to keep that oil really flexible until year 7. Between years 6 and 7 is when all of a sudden that asphalt binder got hard. So with them treating at year 1, they were able to keep the viscosity and the oils flexible for 6 to 7 years. On the flip side, Richfield, for budgetary reasons, didn't start their treatment program until 3 years after they paved. So 3 years after they paved, what we came to realize when we cored is that viscosity, the oil binder got hard again, where it starts to oxidize between year 4 and 5. So what this really told us is that agencies, if you start replacing the Maltenes and putting the Maltenes back in and keeping that oil flexible at the very beginning, agencies get a bigger bang for their buck. So if you do it, but even the first summer, if you pave and 30 days later you throw Maltenes in there, you can keep it good for 6 or 7 years. Therefore, if for budget reasons or for reasons, whatever other reasons, you start at year 2 or 3, it will only last 3, 4, 5 years. So for agencies, you get a bigger bang for your buck the faster you start doing this and keeping the oil in good condition. So the same thing goes for the asphaltenes. So there's this D2006. It's a special test that tests for the asphaltenes to Maltene ratios, and it literally showed the exact same drops. So you're just trying to decrease the asphaltenes. But Woodbury, it was between years 6 and 7 when all of a sudden we realized the decrease in the Maltenes and it was time to retreat. Whereas Richfield, who treated at year 3, all of a sudden between year 4 and 5, we realized that there was that decrease in that ratio, and that showed us it was time to retreat, or it was time for the agency to start thinking about, the next step in preservation. Are they going to do a chip seal or a micro or something like that? So that it started to actually chemically show us when the pavement is decreasing and when an agency needs to start thinking about doing something else, whether it's a second application replacing the Maltenes or something else before the road starts to deteriorate too much. So let me see. Oh, hold on. I'm going to go back. I wasn't able to redo these. So Woodbury also does PCI ratings. And so this I thought again was really interesting and fun, just because I like to kind of geek out on it. But what it basically showed is, again, there's a lot of numbers, but Woodbury, both of these subdivisions that are adjacent to each other, they were constructed from new in 1998. They were brand new subdivisions in 1998. In 2015 and then 2016, each one of these subdivisions got an edge mill and overlay. In 2015, they edge milled and overlaid this subdivision, and then in 2016, the following year, they put down Reclamite Maltene-based technology. And 8 years later, we came in 2023, and they did the PCI ratings. And by putting down the Maltenes 1 year after paving, 8 years later, all of the roadways were still in the 90s. The PCI ratings went from 91 to 99. Consequently, the other subdivision that was also constructed in 1998, so the exact same subdivision, it got an edge mill and overlay 1 year later, in 2016. And the city decided to do nothing, and they were going to compare. They said, we're going to do nothing, we're just going to do the old way, and we're going to see what happens. 7 years later, so it was a year less old, they did the PCI ratings. The ratings go from a 75 to an 88. So you can see, if you are able to replace the Maltenes at the beginning and hold that oil in a good condition, you can keep your roads in really good shape for a really long time. Versus the old way of doing things, doing nothing, it's, everything's in the 7s or the 8s, where everything is in the 9s coming out of the gate if you keep the oil in good condition. So, hold on, let me go to the pictures. So I'm going to show you this. So this is, last week I was actually in Minnesota, so I went out and made sure we took pictures. So this is Spinnaker Drive. So this was paved in 2016, and the city has not done anything. So you can see what their in-house guys are doing crack fill-wise. It's really expensive maintenance-wise. Starting to get some potholes down in the cul-de-sac. It's at 8 years old, this does not look great. Versus, this was paved in 2015. Here we are 10 years later, and they did Maltene Replacement Technology. And you have some crack fill here and a little bit in the back, but it's in really, really good shape. And just so you guys don't think I'm lying, I wanted to do the Google Earth picture, so you know that I'm not a liar and I didn't make those pictures up. So this is from Google Earth that I just did this a couple days ago. There's that Spinnaker Circle, and it was rated at like an 83 in 2023, and this is it 2 days ago. And then this is that Pheasant Run Road with Maltene replacement, so you can see a little bit of the crack filling up there, and that is it today. So that gives you the long-term visual results. Okay, let me go through that. So takeaways to consider. There's a lot of rejuvenators out there. There's Maltene-based, there's soybean-based, there's linseed bio oil-based. There's a lot of things out there. So when you're thinking about a rejuvenation program, some things that you want to think about is that base oil and what it's made of. So that base oil, again, is Maltenes and asphaltenes. And the goal is to keep the oil soft, to keep that viscosity in there. And you want to do it naturally. So again, if you can keep the Maltene content high, you can do it naturally. You want to add naturally back into that oil what it physically lost. And you'll be in good shape, obviously, you can see down the line. So we do have some Maltene-based products. Our flagship product, which is probably about 90% of our work, is called Reclamite Maltene-based replacement technology. It goes down with the distributor, pretty simple. We work throughout the Midwest. We cover about 10 states, and then we have sister companies that cover the rest of the country. So wherever you are, there is someone who does this. Then we also have a product that goes just on joints. It's called Joint Bond. It's a Maltene-based emulsion with a polymer. It goes down 2 feet wide, a construction joint. So you can see here in the middle, what ends up happening is your surface is tight and sealed. So after a rain event, you can see if it's treated, the water kind of beads off. It doesn't sit in the voids, let it deteriorate the pavement down. So it's on construction joints. It can go on rumble strips. It's very effective for DOTs and counties. And then we have a product called CRF. it is more of a rejuvenator product. So, we're pushing preservation and hit those roads at 9s, hit them brand new. CRF is more of a rejuvenator product. It's something that you would use on a 7 or 6 or a 7 or 8, and you're trying to bring it back up to an 8 or a 9. So this is used on older roads, but really the way to be the most cost effective as an agency and the way to get away from trying to save your money on your crack fill and your pothole patching so you can reallocate those dollars down the line is to preserve there at the beginning. That's really when you can start digging yourself out of the hole that unfortunately most agencies see themselves in today. So, do you guys have any questions? Yeah. Yes, so the question was, is there a big upfront cost at year one? Because again, sometimes your residents will say, well, you just paved Susie's road last year, and then you put this stuff on it. What the heck? My road's falling apart. Why does my friend Susie have a new road and then you did something else? There is a cost, so you are right. So, and there's a really good study I can email you. It's the town of Avon, Indiana. So what they look at is, you are correct. So you're going to pave it, and it's maybe $15 a square yard for a mill fill. And then for a Maltene replacement, you might spend $1 to $1.50, and you're going to spend it right out of the gate. So you're right. The cost at year 1 or 2 is more. But as the years go on and you're holding your PCI ratings, you start getting the cost back. And this long-term study out of Avon, Indiana, they did it for 15 years. It shows that over a 15-year period, the agency actually, by preserving, saved 39%. But you're right, out of the gate, you're spending a little bit more. But you do start reallocating. You do start getting the money back, but you're going to have to. It's a long-term game, is the deal. So it's not a short-term. It's a long. You're invested. Once you start preserving, it's an investment, but you do start you reap the benefits on the back end and you start seeing it, but it's going to take a couple years. I'll show you. So this is, the product is, let me see if I can go back. Yeah, the color, the question was, does your striping come back? Your striping, on CRF, it does not. So this kind of rejuvenator, trying to get the road from a 7 to an 8.5, it does not come back. You do have to restripe. With this Maltene-based emulsion, the striping does come back. It takes anywhere from maybe 8 weeks to 5 months, kind of depending on the age of striping, depending on the kind of striping. It does come back, but there's lots of variables on how long. So the other option that some cities do or some counties do is if we go in and spray right after they pave, within a week or two, just the temporary tabs are down, and then they can stripe 2 weeks later. So that's something that can happen too. Or you put down the cheap stuff and then maybe the expensive stuff after you do this. So there's different ways to work with agencies, or you can wait it out. Yes, so the question was, were the roads that I compared, these roads, if it was structurally similar, correct? And the subgrade? Yes, so the subdivisions were right next to each other. They were both built, and that's what I wanted to make sure that I compared apples to apples, and I'm not like pulling the wool over anyone's eyes. So yes, they were both, it's like within the same square mile, built at the same time, 1998, both edge mill and overlay, within a 1 year period in 2015, 2016. So it was apples to apples. Yep. In the same sub base. The question is is it like some of the other rejuvenators out there? I always encourage people, I always encourage people to like be curious and ask questions. Most of us, sometimes I don't want to know what's going in my body. If I'm eating Doritos, I'm not going to look at the back. I don't want to know. So, but, usually I'll try and eat healthy. But, be curious, ask questions. If you are trying to do pavement preservation and you're trying to figure out what you're going to put on your roads, always ask for SDS sheets. Do a little research. You should want to know what's going on your road. If it's safe for the environment, if it's safe for residents, if it's safe for fish and wildlife. So, you could look for that Maltene-based emulsion and make sure it does have maltenes and make sure it's safe. But I always encourage people to be curious, ask questions, ask for safety data sheets, because that will give you a wealth of information. So there's a lot of different products out there. Oh, yeah. So fog seal, this is a Maltene-based emulsion is a napathetic crude. So the question was about fog seals and how those work. So the Maltene-based emulsion is a napathetic crude, and what napathetic means is that it's oil-free. So you'll physically watch it penetrate into the pavement. There you can see, like, this is the process. It goes down, and then it physically penetrates into the air voids. And so it's able to do that because it's a napathetic oil. So like a fog seal is actually a paraffinic oil. So it has waxes on it. Fog seals are designed to specifically sit on top. So it's designed to sit on top. It makes the pavement black. It's going to fill in those voids for a little bit. But if you look at a fog seal, after 2 or 3 years, it's usually all gone. All of a sudden it's not black anymore. And so you can tell it didn't penetrate. If it penetrated, it would stay there forever. But a fog seal, it's gone away because it's no longer black. So it has a wax, it sits on the surface, and it's designed to sit on the surface. And if you think about a fog seal, it's SS1H, and that is designed, that's like a glue that's designed to adhere and overlay. So it's designed to sit on top, and it's supposed to sit on top. So it's different. Any other questions? Yeah. So the question was like high volume, like high speed roads, right? So versus residential. So with this product, you do lose skid resistance. You lose about 20%. The first hour is what we're concerned about, but really 24 hours, which is why limestone screenings go on top. So we do not do this for DOTs. We're not going to do this on the interstates around here, but any cities, any county roads, if there's a county road with hills, if there's a county road with twists and turns, we might evaluate it first. But most agencies' roads we can do, but we we do a lot of that joint bond to DOTs, but we don't push main line because of skid resistance. But otherwise, cities and counties, most of them we can do. Oh, and shoulders. For the Illinois Tollway, last year we just did a big project of shoulders, and so, which that's a great thing to do. So we can do shoulders all day long. We love those. They're easy. Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, we are in, what is that? A trash can? Oh, badge. Oh, you're going to scan badges? Okay, so she has a badge scanner. I'm not sure what that is, but yeah. Oh, so you can get your PDH credits. Oh, I'm sorry. The last thing I forgot to mention, if you guys, well, that didn't work. If you guys will, if there's an evaluation in the app, if you liked me, fill it out. If you didn't like me, don't fill it out. But yeah, if you have questions, booth 1016, we could lead you to the right person in your territory. Or if you want any more information on the technical data, I'm happy to send you guys anything. So thank you.